So, hey, welcome to Derbycon. We're doing our stable talk here on swagger defense. So, my name's Mick Douglas, and this is Pete Petersen. Pete works at a redacted financial services firm, and a bunch of years ago...
We've been redacted for years and years and years.
So, a while back, I got to meet Pete, and this talk actually is... like 5 years in the making.
It's kind of like we put a conversation that we've been having for 5 years in 3 slides. No, how many is it? No.
We're at about 60. We might not finish everything. And one of the things that you need to be aware of is that this is going to be a very strategic talk, but we're going to have some pretty interesting technical teeth in this one. And one of the things that you need to understand when it comes to doing defense better, one of the things that I'm going to be starting to push and try to make a thing in the industry is the term swagger defense. And swagger defense isn't about defense having swagger at all. No. In fact, what swagger defense is taking swagger from the attackers. When you go to the cons, you know, it's all red team all the time is what it seems like. And the problem is right now the deck is stacked a little in their favor. So what we need to start doing is shifting the narrative and tripping them up. That's where things like active defense are, you know, a thing. And one of the things that we want to do is, I realize that some of you can't do true active defense and countermeasures and honeypots. What we're going to do is give you some options that take you closer to it. One of the things that I like to talk about when it comes to swagger defense is it's kind of like being in a rodeo, right? If you're trying to wrestle a bull down to the ground, physics isn't going to work. You're not going to like block the bull and then like force it down. You have to use the bull's momentum against it. You got to be smart in how you do that. And so this talk is really that conversation on how you go about stealing the swagger.
Yeah, and very importantly, you kind of have to train for if you're going to wrestle a bull. You have to train a lot so that that's an okay thing to want to do.
Right, because otherwise you're going to get hurt.
You're going to get hurt.
Yeah. So our hero and who we've lately been modeling for.
We love clowns.
Yep, we love clowns. By the way, as an aside, so I've talked at just about every Derbycon, and on Derbycon 1, Dave Kennedy told me, he said, Mick, if you put an effing clown picture in your presentation, you're never presenting at Derbycon again.
That's it.
I guess I'm not going to present anymore. But if you think about it, the rodeo clown is a pretty interesting person to model after because he's helping to keep a cowboy alive with a little bit of training.
He might be a target.
Yep. And a barrel, right? So misdirection is a thing. Doing little bits of technique is a thing. You know, if you have a bull charging you and the bull's coming at you and you just move by this much and it misses by that much, it's still a miss. So what we're going to be talking about a lot over the little bit of time we have is how we're going to focus ourselves.
Yeah, and really this begins to get into the more strategic portion of the how do you decide what is going to be important for you and your organization and allocating your resources, which are time, talent, and energy, in order to find what's the equivalent of your barrel, right? Because if you can find your barrel, that's a pretty simple thing to understand, implement, and do. So a lot of this talk is about creating the barrel.
Yep. And another thing that we want to push back on, and one of the reasons we use the rodeo clown as kind of our model for who we need to emulate, is that, you know what? They're not the perfect people, right? They make mistakes. They're goofy. And I think that a big part of the problem that we have in the industry...
I bet you rodeo clowns drink ice.
Oh, they probably do. I wouldn't tempt fate, though. But, you've got to be willing to make mistakes, because guess what? You're making them all the time. It's just you need to learn from them better. And so we've got some uncomfortable truths, and this is a whole bunch of phone calls that Pete and I have been having where we basically have been scaring each other about some issues. So
the phone calls are not 5 minutes either.
No. In fact, our wives are sometimes like, I hear her yelling at you and you've heard Heather yelling at me. So here's some uncomfortable truths. There's a lot of skilled attackers out there. Most of your data is already compromised. We've forced attackers now into areas that we can't readily observe them. The attacks are happening incredibly fast. And there's script kiddie attackers, but there's also script kiddie defenders. And then static defense is a losing proposition. I see some pictures being taken. We'll post the slides up later. So uncomfortable truth number one, there's many skilled people. I don't know if you folks saw it, but a while back I did a post on Twitter where I asked, at what point do you consider people to be elite? And I know that this is going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, but, not everyone's special. In fact, everybody's unique, just like everyone else. So one little factoid that we ran into is that the global cyber/information security workforce across the entire globe is 4.5 million people. If you do the math on that, once you start getting to the upper crust, there's still a ton of people here. Now, as way of statistics, I don't know if you know this or not, but Division I football players have a 1.5% chance of making it to the NFL. So when we are saying 1%, that's pro grade. That's double DEFCON. And like the 0.1%, you're talking unicorns at this point. And that's still more than Derbycon. So when organizations tell me, as a consultant, when they say, oh, well, we can stop all but the advanced, are you sure? Because there's a hell of a lot of them.
Can I interject a little thought there?
Yeah.
So just show of hands, who thinks 1% is the number of elite? Who thinks it's more closer to 0.1%? Okay. Who thinks it's at 10%? Okay, so nobody's really willing to commit to these values. I will make a note, whether you think it's 0.1%, 1%, or 5%, doesn't really matter. Up in those numbers, how many companies are in the S&P 500?
All right.
All right. So what's 45,000 divided by 500? 900? That's going all at the same time per company, and that's not scripts. Those are trained, qualified attackers every single day.
So, next uncomfortable truth. Most of your data is already compromised. And one of my favorite quotes about this is from Eric Conrad at Derbycon 6. He said, "I'm already completely pwned. There is no bit of private data left for me. Between OPM and Equifax breaches, he's 100% public info. He's now doing this for my kids." This is an ugly thing that you need to take to leadership. I'm not saying that you have to violate your contractual requirements. I'm not saying you have to violate your, different regulations. But what the hell are you protecting? Ooh, we got to protect the Social Security number. Seriously, folks? So what you need to do is sit down.
I did that. It didn't work.
It didn't work? Yeah, find out what is that thing that makes your organization special. Like, for me, my company, InfoSec Innovations, would cease to exist overnight if my client list got leaked. Right? I joke, the only way you find out who my clients are is a client discloses or court order. Discretion is what we do. I would assume at a redacted financial services company, discretion is what you do.
We are all about our reputation.
Yeah. And so, protect that. Here's another one. We have forced attackers now to the desktops. We have better logging than ever at the servers. We've got great firewall logs going into the SIMs. We've got crisp and clean detection. I'm not asking for you to raise your hand, But if you are collecting logs from all the desktops, all the laptops in your organization, give yourself a pat on the back because you are in rarefied territory. The attackers go after the client-side attacks because that's where the access is. And here's the other thing. We're not looking. Oh, you've got an EDR tool. Oh, okay, cute. They download them and run them in their lab environment. They know how to bypass them. Hell, they even know what you're using because your job posting says, we need somebody that can use product here. And then they say, I wonder what I have to bypass. So, it's a real problem on the desktops. And you've got to stop.
Important note there. It's like if they're looking at LinkedIn as a source of recon, they also know who the admins are, what tools they're using, and then if they want to go after the admins and just bypass all that annoying user stuff so they don't have to escalate, they'll just look at LinkedIn, find them because you're leaking all that data, and tell them exactly how to attack those people.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, that's what I do on campaigns. And the other thing is we have to stop blaming our users. The phishing campaigns that we do against ourselves suck. We got to be honest about it. Attackers cheat. They will do things like this. They'll send an RFP bid to the sales team. Are you going to tell me, InfoSec Pro, that you're going to have the sales team not open an RFP proposal? Good luck with that, because that's a resume-generating event right there.
We'll see more about that in a little bit.
Yes.
That's a cliffhanger.
Now, here's another thing. Attacks are fast, and nothing but nothing scared me into this reality is the NotPetya attack. This is from the Wired article. They walk through how bad this one was. Globally, there was a multinational company that had a 99% infection rate, 16 seconds. Most of you all have incident response procedures where you contact management for permission to make firewall changes. Seriously? You got to start getting faster. Also, and this is brutal, there's a lot of script kiddies out there. To be fair, there's script kiddie attackers, but there's a lot of script kiddie defenders. John Strand has that quote that I love to say all the time. Every time you press the easy button, God deploys a botnet in your environment. Right? There's a lot of snake oil in the industry because people don't understand the tool. They're just downloading a thing, running it, and is it working? Well, the lights are blinking. So, I mean, there's a lot of really weird, perverse economics going on. And part of the issue is that vendors are only being held to account to what we do. So you need to start QAing your tools. Oh, that's so weird. Don't know how that got in there.
Is that the equivalent of today's Rickroll?
That might be the today's Rickroll. If you don't know what I'm talking about, do a little Google search and let the lulls roll. Okay, here's another one. Static defense. It's just toast. I mean, this is what we're doing, and for 20 years now we've told people, have patches, deploy firewalls, run your antivirus. How's that working? Right? So we're at a really rough spot, and Pete and I, it's deliberately blank, Pete and I have really been getting a little kind of sad about how things are, because the state of the industry is pretty rough.
Sad clown.
Yeah, and so it's okay to admit that we're having problems, but I don't think it's okay to just piss and moan and not do anything about it. So what we've been doing is coming up with some things that might help or might change stuff. So a couple ways, path forward. First of all, find the core of your organization. What's that secret sauce that if it gets out, your organization ceases to be? And if it's part of a public data breach, it probably doesn't fit this criteria. So start defending like you mean it. And there's a great collection of advice that Pete came across on how to shape battle plan.
So I'm a CISO, so a lot of what I think about is strategic collections of controls and deploying resources. So I tend to think more strategically, being what rule sets and what architectures am I going to follow in order to achieve an objective or an event or whatever we're trying to do. And as I was beginning to think about this over the past couple of years, one of the first things I realized is, like, we don't know what winning is. We don't have an objective when we're just defending. You don't win by just defending. You can't do anything by just defending. So there has to be another element to it. So I started researching that kind of stuff, and I basically came up there, the Army has published 9 principles of war. It's part of their broader doctrine they teach in the War College since, like, the 1920s. It's all based on previous battles, and it is this. So I chose 5 out of 9 because moose has 4 feet, or 5, and it's kind of like a bull. So here we are with moose. So starting at the M, concentration of superior power at the point of decision. So what have we decided? We decided the point of decision is the desktop. Right? So concentrate your power, your will, your time, your material, your resources on the desktop today. And do it again so that it achieves your objective. Your objective is your stated intent. So, in this case, define what your stated intent is. Maybe you've discovered something that's really important on your network and you don't want that to happen. But I will tell you,
yeah, so our objective here is we want to make attacking so costly that the attackers say, "No, sir," and walk away.
Yes, so if we're going to say our objective is to win, and what does win look like? Well, in these principles, they teach you winning is when the enemy stops attacking. So how do we get there? If that's your objective, we got a lot of work to do and a lot of hard thinking and retooling to make that happen against whether it be 4,500 or 45,000 attackers that's coming for you. Offense means all of your actions, all of your defenses better have an offensive component that goes towards achieving your objective. This all makes sense later in the slide, but this is just what's going in as Mick and I are designing a set of controls to achieve these things. Simplicity. It's got to be super simple. You got to find your barrel. An easy idea that you can implement everywhere. Because everybody can understand simple, right? If you've got a stack, your security stack is 500 tools and bro logs here and packet captures here, that's complex. That's a lot of surface area to attack, and the attackers will just own your detection tools at that point. Economy of force is related to mass, and that just means if I'm going to focus all my efforts on the point of decision, focus less otherwhere. For example, let's say we're talking about getting them onto the desktop. Let's say you do things to channel them into the desktop, for example, private VLANs or VACLs or things like that. Those are going to need to be used, again, to foster the mass. Make sense? Right, so this is just a way to think about the problem of the cybersecurity as it's evolving.
So now, I wish I could take a picture of y'all's faces. You're like, what the hell just happened? So here's the deal.
My degree's in philosophy, by the way.
So here's the deal. We've got to start simplifying things. We got to start doing things more effectively. And the attackers are doing this already. They have these talks where they talk about living off the land for offense. We need to start living off the land for defense. That leaves us things like this. And a lot of you are looking at this going, really? That's what we got to fight with? How is this fair? Well, that's actually what we're kind of trying to shoot for here, right? So what the attackers are expecting when they see that this is our defenses, they think that's what we're bringing to the fight. Nah, here's what they're going to run into, okay?
The rodeo clown.
So what we're going to do here is do a demo of the current state. Just a real simple thing. We're going to pop a interpreter. Do you want to chat while I set that up?
So what we're doing is Mick is going to be demoing a set of typical things that you'd see any 504 class, and they're going to go, hey, this is effective, and we're going to go, wow, look, shell, and it's going to be easy. And then we're going to do an easy thing, and then there's not going to be shell. And then we're going to do another really easy thing, and there's really not going to be shell. And what that's going to do, that's going to stop any element of recon back into the attacker's mind. So what we want to do with these tools is infect the brain, make them doubt, create self-doubt within it. Did I compile my interpreter wrong? Did I get it to the desktop? Do you guys have mail? Do they have a web browser? We want to give them nothing And if we do give them information back, we want to give them misleading information back so that their next wave of attack is wrong.
So here, just to show no tricks, what we've got is a simple multi-handler running, and we slide over to our victim machine, and this is where the RFP, let me zoom in here. This RFP unzip.executable, this would...
Who doesn't want to click on that RFP.unzip exit?
Well, I'll tell you what, any salesperson that's commission-driven sure as hell will. So here's the deal. You double-click this. This is really just a meterpreter. Let's try that again.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. So, compromised. Okay?
Wow.
Watch what happens, though, if we just make a real quick change. What we're going to do is implement a firewall rule. Simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Derby demo, we're going to block the connection. Outbound. Everybody's scared about doing host-based firewall. Blocking outbound is a dramatically easier thing to do because now we're listening. So we go over here, we run it. Oh. Wait, let's make sure the firewalls are stopped. Here we go. Let's demo fail. Okay, but you know what? Here's an interesting...
There's always that part in your defenses where you have to enable the tools. That was just to make the point.
You have to test your stuff.
Whoops. There, well, demo fail. Why is this not?
So imagine no shell.
They're not pleased. Okay. Now.
Yeah, they're on.
One more time.
No.
And then we'll move on. There's nothing simpler than not working. As we all know.
Come on. There we go. Nothing's happening. And here's the cool thing. This is where the attackers won't know what's going on. Go ahead.
No, I had nothing to say.
Okay. So a thing that you need to accept is that our networks are complicated and attackers are taking advantage of this. So they see our networks as real easy because they've done the recon. They understand how the pieces parts are together. So here's how the Moose gets applied.
Yeah, so this is, as I was thinking about applying Moose to a typical corporate network, this is what I was thinking. All of my controls, everything. Let's get them on the desktop where I know where my particular skills are, and I know how to manage it and log and alert on that. Right? So that seems like the opposite of what you want, but it's really, if you get them there, they're not going anywhere, and if you can keep them from getting anywhere from there, that's really a good situation. Because you can turn your desktops and just do this incredible sensor network with a lot of good intel. The attackers, again, for purposes of design here, we've decided what are the two win conditions. We want to make the attackers stop. The second win condition, if we're red teaming, that as a result of the engagement, it's not just me learning. The red team's getting better too. Again, we talked about this, so all of the defensive tactics are designed specifically to keep them on that desktop. All my other controls, again, funneling them into the desktop again, and I figure, why not, if attackers are living off the land, why can't I defend off the land? Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Counterattack off the land. Because defense, again, is not a principle.
So let's talk app locker. Application whitelisting can be bypassed, but in order to bypass it, you have to make noise. Once you've got application whitelisting up and running, it's as simple as consuming application logs and looking for a single event ID. It's that easy.
Has anybody from Binary Defense seen this event before?
So one thing that everybody gets squirrely about, though, when it comes to doing this analysis, is they say, I don't want to turn this on because I'm going to get in trouble. Well, what you do is if you run something like sysmon, you could, So what I've got here is a tool called Security Tailor. What it does is, whoops, got to be admin. Damnation. So what this tool does is it allows you to actually consume your sysmon logs to get a running list of all the applications that user ran. You want to do application whitelisting, do this. It's simple, easy, and you're going to have nobody care because to them it will be completely transparent. So I hope we've given you guys some things to think about. I hope that you understand that this is just the start. The deck is stacked against you. It's not fair, but nothing in life is. I want you to start realizing that fall 7 times, stand 8 is the way forward. Let's go fight and win together. I'll put the slide deck out. I'll post it on Twitter. Let me jump to the thing where we have that. You guys can take pictures. And then Pete and I will be outside answering any and all questions you may have.
Did we run out of time?
We did run out of time.
There's some really cool slides left.
Yeah, and we've got bonus content too for you. So hopefully this starts making you guys think about stuff.
There's one cool judo flip that I do want to tell you about so that you do think about going up and downloading some, thinking about these whitelisting policies. It is possible to really, really protect yourself by simply blacklisting Microsoft within your app whitelisting policy.
He does that, by the way.
Yeah, and that sucks for the attackers because that leaves you nothing to use. It leaves you no land. The land is fallow. So, thank you.